because it's a key component in the next ATM that we're going to do. So refreshing it for yourself can be really useful. So if you just close your eyes and think about where the top of your spine is, the uppermost vertebra or the base of your skull, what sort of image or kinesthetic sense do you form? Okay, and then open your eyes and you're going to put, I'll tell you before you put your fingers in your ears, you're going to put your fingers in your ears and imagine a line between your two fingers, and that is approximately where the head rests on the skull. So for most people, they imagine, they have some idea that their skull ends where their chin is. Or maybe, or their cervical spine ends where their chin is. But it's actually inches, 2 inches, often 2 inches higher. So if you imagine that axis through your head, so like so, except, you know, he's got a bigger head, but that's approximately where the finger of the line, the extension of your fingers meet, would be where the skull rests on the first cervical vertebra. And you may recall Zoran talking about that the base of the skull has two kind of sit bones. They're not really sit bones because they're not shaped like that. They're more, if you cup your hands like that, that would be the shape of the bottom of your skull, about 20 times magnified. Okay? But functionally, these condyles of the skull combined with, articulate with the skull, with the first cervical vertebra, and create quite a few degrees of freedom, meaning movement in many directions. So the first movement that you can think of, if you have that, if we make that line, it can become an axis, which means something rotates around it. So if I do that, and I do that, can you see that movement? It's like, so the image, sorry, it's the image that comes to mind. Jenny might have a better one. If you have a chicken on a barbecue spit, on a roasting spit, and the chicken turns, that's the axis of nodding. Got a different one, Jenny? No? Okay. Then if we change the axis and we put it from front to back, again, it would probably go through just below your nose. Slight variation with, you know, different people depending on their organization, and take it directly through, if the eyes are on the horizon, take it directly through the back of the head. It doesn't come out below the skull, it comes out a little bit up the posterior aspect of the skull. So you've got this forward axis. So if you think of the chicken on the spit, on this axis, what movement would you make here? Side to side. Yeah, it's a little tilting movement. Tiny little tilting movement. There is some degrees of rocking also. I mean, the tilting, that axis is the tilting. With the vertical axis, so turning, because the other movement that you are aware of that happens between the head and the first two vertebrae is turning, which is a vertical axis. Like that. Okay? And so that predominantly happens between the first and the second vertebra. With that, Zoran gave you an image of holding one finger up, making a little fist around your finger, and you have the turning of C1 and the skull on that first vertebra. They are the only two vertebrae of the whole length of the spine that have some degree of differentiation, that can have some movement that can happen a little more independently of the rest of the spine. So, artistic skills forgiven, hopefully. So, so here we have, but you know, I quite like the expression on this one's face. Here we have the vertical axis, and that predominantly happens at C1, 2. So C being standing for the cervical region, and the numbers number the vertebra from highest to lowest. Okay, so that happens, the turning happens between 1 and 2. The tilting, little bit of tilting. What would happen if you made the tilting bigger? What would happen through your spine? What? Yeah, curve. Do you know what we call that when it gets bigger? Lateral flexion, yes. Or, pardon? Bending. In which direction? Lateral. Amok, pardon? Lordosis. That's a different direction. Okay? But we call it side bending. Is what people who don't have any anatomical knowledge have more of can relate to more. And but the very beginning of it that happens in that between the head, the skull, and C1, it's that little ear pricking. You know, if you cock your ear to hear a sound, or yes, if you make it a little bit bigger. What culture do we kind of connect that with? Indian, yes. And then nodding, which is yes, which is around this. Okay, so now I would like you to do a little experiment. Any questions about that? No is turning. Yes. yeah, yes, no, maybe joint. I like that. Yeah, maybe. Uh-huh. Yes. And Jenny has got some great little, do you want to use, oh, you want to use them this afternoon? Okay. So if we think, we'll bring them in a second. If we think of the wall, so I'm going to do them big, and movement in the plane of the wall, that means I have a wall in front of me. This is the movement that's possible. This is the direction of movement. So in the, and we call this the frontal plane, the plane of the wall, and side bending or lateral flexion occurs in that plane. Yeah? So what's another plane? That's not transverse. Yeah, so we've got transverse, which is the plane of the floor or the plane of the table. What movements happen in that plane? Yeah, rotation. Okay, and then we have the sagittal, and that has a midline plane. So sagittal, you can think of as the bicycle wheel plane, this direction. And what happens in that plane? Flexion and extension. Yeah. So I just We'll use this little banana now. Do you want to do it, Jenny? Seeing as they're your little tools. Yeah, come on, come on. Jenny. Oh, I can give you this. Whoops, I'm going to hold it in there. Feels like good timing. But you can't.
No, that's all right. So, just turn it down a bit. Okay. So you know that the world's divided into two kinds of people. The ones who fit the models and the ones who don't. The world of movement is divided into fruit and vegetables. Now, I happened to be in Queensland when I made this amazing discovery. So, yesterday we started playing with observing bananas. Now, you may or may not have noticed that, but when Loretta was doing her beautiful turning, we talked about C curves. So, if we look at Stephanie, you can see there's the banana on her. And if she changes to the other side, the banana now does that. Now, banana's a nice kind of simple image for my simple mind that I can think, first, where is it? And then, is it a nice smooth curve? Or, as we talked about yesterday, are there bits that are kind of straight or wonky or... So, when I hold this kind of template in my mind, I can see that, you know, there are some bits that seem to be curvy and there are some bits that are more straight. So I'm holding this internal reference of a nice smooth curve and comparing my internal reference with what I see. And sometimes we'll see that there's also a twist, that the top and the bottom, this one doesn't twist well, are not in the same plane. So you can see that the top of the banana's at a different place than the bottom. Yep. So it may be something that we refer to from time to time of where's the banana and what's it doing? And you will know exactly what we mean. Other times we might be more kind of grown up and talk about C curves and flexion and side bending and stuff like that, rotation and that kind of thing. And sometimes we'll just think of, what's the banana doing? Is it curved or is it twisted? We haven't talked a lot about carrots, and we might leave that just sitting there during the week. And for those of you who watch QI, you know they sometimes have a little card that if you spot where the carrot fits in, you get bonus points. Okay.
So could you sit in a comfortable way where you feel like you're free to make a banana-like movement? So it could be that but try and sit symmetrically, but where you're available to move, to change your shape. So it means if sitting crossed legs comfortable for you, great. If sitting on your heels is comfortable, great. If neither of those is comfortable, you could pop on a stool for a minute. What I'd like you to do is to put one hand and contour your hand to your neck. So with this hand, you're going to sense what the vertebrae of your neck do. Okay? So could you say no with your movement of your head? And just notice, are you involving the movement of your neck, the vertebra? Or is the movement more in the upper cervical and of your skull? So now constrain your neck. No movement of the vertebra of your neck. So this is where you can deceive yourself depending on what you're focusing on. So if you constrain not the upper two vertebrae, but anything below that, there is quite a significant amount of movement. But can you stay in the range where you don't involve, the motion doesn't link in to the lower vertebra or your shoulders? Great. Okay. Now, gradually make that movement a little larger so that you feel the movement of your head and the turning in the upper vertebra, and feel when do the vertebra of your neck begin to engage? Or it could be that you feel it in your thoracic spine. It could be that you feel it in your pelvis, a change in pressure or weight on one side of your pelvis or the other. So you're not trying to intentionally do it, but trying to see, can you feel a linkage, a chain of motion that begins in the movement of your head and then travels in some way, maybe sequentially, maybe not. So it may be that you feel movement of your head and upper vertebra, then you feel something in your pelvis, then you feel something in your thoracic spine. Okay, try it with your other hand. So first of all, just the movement of no in that direction. So it's a turning of your head. You might want to see if it makes a difference with your eyes open or your eyes closed. Yes. We're not nodding, we're doing no. So no is left, right, turning. Yeah? I get a little bit confused too. You know, when I wrote no, I wanted to write yes, and then I remembered no, yes happens around a different axis. So maybe in this direction, it's easy, a little easier or a little more difficult for you to differentiate the movement of your skull and upper two vertebrae. So it could be more difficult or it could be easier. And then expand the movement and see if you can feel how the movement of your head and your eyes in that direction kind of draws more of your spine along as your head turns further. Or not, depending what's happening in your abdomen, the musculature of your shoulders, and your chest. Okay, so now let's try yes, nodding. So again, put one hand behind your neck and make the movement tiny to begin with. Really small, trying to visualize and tune in to the kinesthetic internal sensations. So this is where a visual image really can help you hone your attention to a location where in yourself where you may be able to perceive the sensations of movement. You may feel the musculature under your little finger at the base of your skull because that's what is activating this motion. And then gradually make it a little larger. So rather than just simply a small, tiny nod, you're making a little bit bigger. So your back of your head tilts backwards. Your chin will lift away from your throat. What happens to the shape of your neck when you do that? What happens through the length of your spine? And now bring your head back to a more upright position and then nod forwards. So it's the down part of the nod. And then gradually make that a little larger and feel if you sense the response or the invitation for the rest of your spine to assist that movement. And what would that be if you make it a larger nodding movement? So you've got the nodding of the movement of your skull on C1, and then you continue to take your head in that direction. It's going to create a folding. So your head is moving downwards in the direction of looking between your legs. Maybe put one hand on your lower back. And the upper part of your lower back, or wherever it's comfortable to begin with. So nod your head in the direction of downwards and then continue that movement downwards. Remember in the visible body when you were exploring flexion or folding, can you feel anything happening underneath your hand? Does the spine underneath in contact with your hand, is it tending to move backwards as your head moves downwards and forwards relative to yourself? So these little movements of your head on your spine are functionally coupled with the entire length of your spine, including your pelvis. We can inhibit the motion somewhere. We can restrict parts of ourselves from moving. But if we don't have any injuries or junk or rubbish going on in our spine, that's what would happen. If you watch a little 2-year-old look down, or 3-year-old, that's what you'll see happen. So now let's do the... So the question is, when you're folded and your head is down, on the down direction of the nodding, how do you come back? Do you come back up with your pelvis or do you come back with your head? Both are possible. And knowing that both are possible will help you recognize what someone else is doing. And it's not about having one way, it's can you do both so that your nervous system is free to make the best choice in whatever function you're doing, whatever action you're doing. And as you were learning the Zohar, it's the big muscles of the pelvis and hips and lower back that can direct force through the spine to move the head in space so that the muscles of the head and neck and eyes are free to do the subtle, fine refinements of orientation. So now, the tilting movement. So you can go whichever side you choose, but see, can you find a way that the tilting of your head, so it's as if you're going to be a banana with a concavity, hold the banana up here. So if you're going to go this, what would be congruent with the head? So if I move my head, my right ear to my right shoulder and I try to make a banana, can you see that they're going in opposite directions? My head's going that way and my shoulders are going that way. So tilting my head to the left, making that, and then letting that carry through the length of my spine, your spine. See if you can find that. So it's a movement of your head and then finding the coupling. And most of us have a favorite side in which to go to. So you could use both hands on your neck this time to see whether once you've tilted your head, you can feel that little side bending, how the vertebrae of the neck contribute to the curve. And once you've tried one side, try the other side. You'll often see practitioners looking at and sensing the movements of a person's skull, their organization of their skull and their spine at the beginning of a lesson and the end of a lesson, to explore the connectivity and the ease of connectivity. And it can also give you information about what parts aren't involved or aren't participating in the action. Are you lost or just got a question? No? Pardon? Arriving. Oh, okay. That's okay. It's just that's one place you could initiate the movement. And then once you notice that you have a favorite way of leading, you can see, can you adapt that, change that a little bit? Do you have choice in that? And that is a strategy that we use in ATM, awareness through movement lessons, and in FI about changing the initiation, where the movement begins, and see how it affects the motion through a person's organization. Okay. So lie down on your back now. And take a moment to sense your contact with the floor. And what sort of image do you form now of your head resting in contact with the floor? Where your spine meets your head? The shape of the curve of your neck? The space behind your neck? And then how where your spine again meets the floor. Some people it's at the top of the thoracic spine, between the shoulders, or some people it's lower down, between the shoulder blades. So get a sense of the length of that curve. And then observe the vertebrae that are in contact with the back, of your back with the floor, along the length of your thoracic spine. And then where do they leave the floor again? So for most people, but not all, we have a curve in the lumbar spine, so the vertebrae at rest when we're lying aren't clearly pressing in contact with the floor. And it can be the case that the lumbar vertebra in contact with the floor and the cervical vertebra. Just try that. Try and see what would happen if you flatten your neck towards the floor. It's probably not possible for you to touch. And if anyone's spine is touching, then they've got some serious trouble going on. And the same with the lumbar spine. So let that go. Don't keep that. Don't hold that there. And then notice the length of the curve of in your lower back and lower thoracic spine, and where does your spine touch the floor again with your pelvis? Somewhere on the sacrum? Is it lower down on the sacrum or on the higher part of the sacrum? Some people rest on their coccyxes. And take a moment to sense your breathing. Does your breathing change the curve of your spine in any way? The shape of your spine? In what directions do you feel the movement of your breath moving you this morning? Gently roll your head a little right and a little left. Just notice what's the quality like. And now that you have again refreshed or your image of the articulation between the skull and the first vertebra and the first vertebra and the second, can you listen for the sensations of movement in that region? How far down through the length of your spine do you feel an echo of that movement? And then let your head slowly move less and less to either side till you find the place where you feel at rest. And maybe that's in the middle. Maybe it's a little off middle for you right now. So bend your knees, please. And bring your knees over your abdomen. And let your knees hang comfortably apart. And begin to direct your hands toward holding the soles of your feet from between your legs, your thumbs with your fingers, and then let go again. Keep your knees over your abdomen, but bring your hands down. So let your feet hang. Let your feet hang towards your buttocks. So if you take your hands away and you don't hold your legs, your lower legs up in the air, your feet will hang. Because you're not doing any work in your knees, so they'll hang. Now, this time as you do that, pay attention to what happens through the length of your spine. Do you want this? Is it too low? We can get a roll or a blanket. I'll get something. Oh, maybe this is higher. So do that several times. And notice, if you think of the 24 vertebrae of the length of your spine, is that high? That's a bit higher. Yeah, I understand. Get this. What happens to the curve of the vertebra of your neck? See, how we go. One more. Does it arch a little bit? Does it flatten And what happens to your shoulders? Do they lift away from the floor? What happens in your lower back? And what do you do with your head? Does your head press the floor? Does it slide on the floor? Do you want it further away? Do you breathe in? Do you breathe out? Do you stop your breath? So now take hold of the underneath, the soles of your feet from between your legs, right hand to right foot, left hand to left foot. And in this position, very gently, very slowly, can you open your legs a little sideways? Both, if you can. And come back. Let your knees bend again and your feet and lower legs come closer to your buttocks. Go very gently, softly. See how it is this morning to do this. Can you listen while you're opening your legs to feel for the easiest direction, to sense whether there's any moment where your breath stops, and have the intention of making each movement easier. It's not about stretching your legs, but trying to give yourself the sense and the time and have the patience to use yourself in a way that's other than your habitual. Okay, rest a moment. So that means put your feet on the floor, lengthen your legs if you want, put your arms by your sides, and listen to your contact with the floor, to the length of your spine, from your coccyx to your head, where your spine meets your head and how your head is resting on the floor. Bend your knees again, stand your feet. Now this time, you're not going to hold your feet. You're going to make a fist with your hands. Bring your knees over your abdomen. Lift your pelvis, rock your pelvis so it comes away from the floor, and place your hands under your fists underneath your pelvis. So your pelvis will be tilted a little bit off the floor. And there's different ways of using your hands. So you can use your hands so you make a fist like you're holding on to one of the hand supports in a train, vertical hand support, or you can put those hands so that they're thumb side down, or you can make a little platform with your hand. So find what's comfortable for you, and you may want to play with it. So now in this position, let your knees be comfortably open and begin to swing your legs, a very gentle swing. It's not like you're pushing a swing to make it go higher, but so you're not rolling side to side. Your knees are open, and you're going to make a little swing of your feet to open your legs, not left and right. Just a little swing. And so it's not opening and closing your hip joints. So your thighs stay more or less towards your abdomen. You start with your feet hanging near your buttocks, and you make a little swing of opening your legs so that your feet will go sideways in a direction of headwards, and then they come back down again. You lower them. You lower them all the way to your buttocks. You lower them. And then you do a little swing, a little swing. That's it. The movement no, your hands are keeping your pelvis tilted, and the movement would be initiated from your legs. Could be, there's many ways you could initiate it. You could use your abdominal muscles. You could use your large muscles on the front of your thighs. You could use your ankles. So find out what's the easiest way for you to do this that feels like it's really just simple, light. Only what you can do easily, paying attention to what direction your feet go in, what direction it takes your knees in. If your feet can be soft in the ankles, all the better. But you could try both ways. You could try bending your ankles upwards, but the feet come away from the buttocks. Yeah. So it's a swing with the lower legs. Like that. Anyone else feel like they've not got it? So some people are putting the emphasis on the feet dropping back down. Some people are putting the emphasis on the feet lifting. But to begin with, so everyone's pause for a minute with your feet hanging near your buttocks, with your knees over your abdomen. And can you let your knees hang apart a little bit? What's the distance that you can let your knees separate from one another? Now, from that position, make a movement of unbending your knees so that your feet will lift, and as they lift, because of the anatomy of your legs, they're going to spread sideways a little bit. They're going to open sideways, and then they come back towards your buttock. So it's not about fixing your thighs. Maybe when you swing your feet, your knees come a little bit closer to your chest. And can you smile while you do this? Be playful about it. Make it light. Make it easy. Both together. That's it. Now we're starting to look more alike. More human. It's a more human, similar way. What's happening in your neck as you do this? So if it's controlled, it's not a swing. So a swing has some kind of, looseness to it. And it's not necessarily that a swing will change the speed depending on where it is in relationship to gravity. Okay, sorry, I just saw the controlled one. Okay, take your hands out, stand your feet, rest a moment. Pay attention to your contact with the floor, the length of your spine, your image of your spine. How are you imagining it's lying? And imagining it, do you include the sensations of contact, the image of width, of depth. Bend your knees, stand your feet. Leave your right foot on the floor and hold your left foot with both hands. Or if it's difficult for you, you could change it and do the other side, whatever you prefer. And now begin to gently lift your foot, lift your leg, and see what happens. Find out, what do you do? Where do you lift to? Are you lifting to the same place in space each time? So start with actually holding the foot. So that may mean your knee is open to the side more. If that helps you get, yes, both hands to your foot. So don't strain. Don't stretch. Do your knee and foot go in the same direction? Head in the same direction? If you put a little arrow on the sole of your foot, what direction is it? Or on the tip of your toes, what direction is that arrow moving in space? So the people who've got one arm outside their left leg, can you bring that arm inside? Yes. And if you can, please, thumbs with your fingers. Your left hand will be holding over the top of your foot. The right hand will be holding underneath your foot. So only do the part of this next movement that feels really pleasurable. See if that's a directive or a direction that you can do. Could you lift your head and your leg at the same time, but make it easy? No strain in your leg. No matter how little you lift, can you avoid going into the range where you feel something is stretching? So for some of you, it's going to be a tiny part of what you're doing. Now you know you can do that much, so see if you can do less. And notice if that changes anything in your breathing, in the feeling of the movement, whether it feels more comfortable to you. And how do you lift your head? What shape does your neck make as you lift your head and your foot together? Does your chin come closer to your throat or lift away from your throat? Okay, rest. Notice as you lengthen yourself, what you sense on your left side, on your right side. Through the left side of yourself, through the right side of yourself. And then bend your knees again, please, and take hold of your right foot in the same way. So some people are interlacing their fingers. Keep them interlaced. Whoa, 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 whoa. Isn't that interesting? Some people are, and I must be doing it wrong. So I would like you to feel the difference. So those who have their fingers interlaced, keep them interlaced. Those who don't, keep them not. And several times lift your right leg and lower it, just gently, easily. sensing what happens through the length of your spine, and if the length of your spine changes, the shape of your spine changes. And then change. If you have your fingers interlaced, hold your foot, thumb and fingers together, and do it several times. And if you had your hands holding your feet, interlace them. Just notice, can you identify a place where what you're doing changes either in the quality or the sensation or the effort when you do it one way or the other? Why did you choose the way you did it? What is it in your organization that made that more comfortable, more convenient, easier, or maybe more difficult? Now hold your foot however way you feel is easier for you. So for some people, it could be a feeling of security, or it could be that interlacing the fingers enables something that the other way doesn't, but it's not going to be the same for everyone. Now lift your head and your leg together. Not high, not stretching, but looking for an easier direction. What direction does your leg say remain softest in, gets least stiff? Although I'm happy to see some of you are no longer moving in the range where your leg is getting stiff, but some are still doing in the stretching range. What happens in your lower back? What shape does your neck form? Does lifting your head while you, at the same time as lifting your leg, make it any easier to lift your leg? More comfortable? Maybe if you're observing the angle that your knee is bent at, maybe you notice a change in the angle when you do the movement one way or another. Okay, leave that. Lengthen your legs, lengthen your arms. Rest a moment. Please bend your knees again. This time, bring both of your knees over your abdomen again. Hold from between your legs the sole of each foot. And just let your legs hang there. But let your knees be comfortably apart. And lift your head. And then lower it again and pause. And as you do that, you can choose how many times you do it or how high you lift. Notice what happens through the rest of yourself. Which part of your head are you thinking of lifting? What's happening in your chest, with your sternum, in your abdomen? Does your pelvis change its contact with the floor when you lift your head? Then leave your head on the floor. Keep holding your feet. If you need a rest out of the position, you can do so. Now begin to move with holding your feet, if it's comfortable. Okay, now everybody have a rest. Okay, please bend your knees, bring them up over your torso again. Hold on in the same way. If this is really uncomfortable for you or creating any pain, you can, for this moment, keep your feet standing on the floor. But in this position, could you lift your chin a little bit away from your throat and then let it come back to rest? Your chin away from your throat, and sense what happens to the shape of your neck. What happens when you lift your chin away from your throat? Does the place of contact of the back of your head on the floor change? So it's not about doing it as much as you can, but noticing how you're doing it. And the smaller the movement you can do and notice what is happening through the rest of the yourself, the more likely you are to notice if you're doing something that's unnecessary. So where do you feel you work in order to do this movement? You're doing it with the neck muscles at the back of your head? Is there another way? Yes. Make it smaller and smaller and smaller. You may even feel that that the back of your head describes a tiny little line on the floor. You could imagine if you had a crayon attached to your head, that crayon would draw, might only be a centimeter or 2 centimeter line on the floor. And feel what's happening through your torso. In your abdomen, in your lower belly. Does this movement of your head pass through the vertebra of your spine to influence your pelvis at all? Now combine that movement with lifting your legs, opening your legs sideways, holding from underneath the soles of your feet. And notice, does it influence the opening of your legs in any way? And if you're moving to the point where you feel strain or stretch, it will be difficult to appreciate through those sensations whether it makes a difference or not. Okay, leave it. Lengthen your legs. Take a pause. Please come back to the same position. Bring your knees over yourself. Hold on to the soles of your feet with your hands. And this time, bring your chin a little closer to your throat so that the back of your neck, the arch of your neck, lengthens a little bit. It moves a little closer to the floor. Doesn't need to be a big movement. It's in that direction. And then you can play with the size. And then let that go and do it again. Now, could you combine that movement with opening your legs sideways? So each time you open your legs, you lengthen your neck. Your chin comes a little closer to your throat. Listening for if or how that might, or if it does, influence the opening of your legs sideways. Now, as you lift your legs, can you lift your head again away from the floor? And notice when you lift your head, is your chin coming closer to your throat so that the curve of your neck is changing? Could you lift your head so that your chin lifts first and your neck arches a little more? And notice which way, if one of them does, influences the opening of your legs sideways. Does one way of lifting your head make it a little easier or your legs a little lighter to open sideways? Okay, leave it. Let go of your legs, lengthen your legs, your arms. Please bend your knees again. Take hold of both feet. And let's come back to the taking the chin away from the throat a little bit. A tiny movement. So you're keeping your head on the floor, but make it very tiny and quick. Like puh, 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 puh. Really small, really quick. And how do you do that? Can you feel anything happening in your lower abdomen? What happens to your shoulder blades? And what sort of movement is there in your stomach and chest? So when you're thinking of lifting your chin away from your throat, the upper vertebra, C1, C2, are moving a little forwards relative to the floor, but there's no muscles in your neck that can lift them like that. The organization comes from lower down. And it's a different use of our abdominal muscles than many people are used to. Can you feel that your pelvis can be moved, not through the movement of your legs, but through this movement of your head? If you make it small and fast. And breathe. Because if you're stopping your breath in any way, you stop the abdominal muscles acting on your thorax, which is the ribs are connecting to your spine. So it influences the upper thoracic vertebra, which if your neck is soft and available, will change the curve of your cervical spine. Okay, so we've explored 4 ways of using your head and the curves of your neck in combination with the opening of your legs sideways. So come back with your knees over your abdomen. Hold on to the soles of your feet from between your legs. So now you're going to combine them, opening your legs sideways, holding on to the soles of your feet from underneath, not over the top, from underneath. And as you open your feet sideways, you could lift your head, bringing your chin towards your sternum. You could lift your head, letting your chin come away from your throat, letting your head hang back. You could lift your legs and open them sideways and keep your head on the floor and lengthen your neck. Draw your chin a little closer to your throat. Or you could let your chin, leave your head on the floor and let your chin come away from your throat as you open your legs. Mm-hmm. Yet. Pointing. Hoiking. Okay, you just do what you can. We might have a look at Elena. So think, which part of the head are you thinking of lifting? And there, you just mobilize yourself to do it. And you find it'll change if you don't want to achieve it. We're going to go to something else now, so you'll be able to do them again later, perhaps. So rest. Please come back to holding your feet in the same way. Now just open your left leg sideways. Just gently, just lightly. So you lift your foot, open it sideways, and feel how it opens now. Do you feel the weight of your leg inviting you to roll? So don't roll completely, but find out how much rolling helps the opening of your leg. Do you begin to roll immediately? Which would be possibly more of an undifferentiated movement between your leg and your torso. Or does your leg open a certain amount and then it's as if the weight of your leg gradually shifts your weight more onto the left side of your spine? So each time come back and only go as far as you can easily go, and then bend your left leg again. And the next time you come back to the middle, lift your right leg. Lift your right leg and open it sideways and roll a little to the right. Just roll to wherever the opening of your leg takes you. What's your head doing? Is your head rolling also? Can you see the hand of the foot that you're opening to the side? So there's a small movement of your head, a little right and a little left, which comes together with the movement of your spine and your pelvis. Now, each time as you roll a little to the right or a little to the left, can you add the movement of taking your chin forwards a little bit? away from your throat. So the curve of your neck changes. The back of your head may even slide a tiny little bit on the floor as it also rolls. Sorry, I can't hear you. So you're moving as you open one leg sideways, you're moving your chin forwards, away from your throat, away from your sternum, and at the same time, allowing your head to roll so that the movement of the chin forwards, it's not at the expense of rolling your head, but it's a combined movement. So your head is rolling with the movement of your spine, and you're moving your chin forwards. Okay, leave it. Lengthen your legs. Sense your contact with the floor. The length of your spine, the weight of your head. And then come back to the same position, holding both of your feet underneath the soles. And this time, keep holding your feet and roll yourself all the way onto your left side. So you can put your legs on the floor, but you stay connected to them with your hands. It can be lengthened a little bit if it's comfortable, but you roll to your side, stay there. Now on your side, holding your feet with your legs not stretched, but comfortably long, can you do the movement of protruding your chin forwards, taking your chin a little bit away from your throat, and then lengthening your neck, bringing your chin in again. Just a small movement. Your chin forwards, feeling how that influences the shape of your neck and the length of your legs, and then bringing it back. Does one leg have any inclination to lengthen a little bit more? So your feet are on the floor. You're on your side in a way that your feet are on the floor as much as possible. And then you do the movement of taking the chin forwards. Change the way you hold your feet if you need to. So hold your feet from, maybe hold the outside edges. So what does this ask of your spine? It asks surrounding. Yes. And you're trying to sense on this side whether you're moving your chin forwards away from your throat influences the ease of lengthening one leg or the other. No. It's a movement of your jaw relative to your throat, but that involves your head. It does take your jaw forwards, but not just the lower jaw. Okay, roll yourself back onto your back and over onto the other side and explore that on your other side. Hands between your legs if you can. If they're on either side, they'll be acting as a constraint and it won't be possible. Well, it is possible, but to lengthen them. I was going to say, but somebody just did it, so it is possible. So even when something isn't clear to you, something doesn't make sense, you can't find sense in it, can you still stay with curiosity or a little bit of intrigue about exploring yourself with the intention of doing this? So you're moving towards an action, even if the action doesn't feel completely feasible for you yet. Okay, leave it, roll to your back, pause a moment. And then one last time, could you please bend your knees, bring them over your torso, hold on to the soles of your feet from between your legs, underneath, and gently swing your legs and open them sideways and see, how is this now? You swing sidewards and upwards. So there's an increasing distance between your feet, between your knees. So it's not left and right, but upwards. Now, as you do that, could you explore the different ways of using your head? So that was lifting your head away. So as you do the movement, as you open your feet sideways and they move upwards relative to yourself, you could lift your head with your chin coming closer to your throat. You could lift your head with your chin coming away from your throat. You got it, Angela. You could leave your head on the floor, lengthen your neck by bringing your chin towards your throat a little bit. Open your legs with your chin coming away from your throat. Do each one 2 or 3 times for yourself. Not stretching. Little swing with your legs, lightly, lighter, easier, do less. But you're timing it with the movements of your head. It's not legs first, head after, or head first, legs after. It's trying to find the coordination where they happens together. Okay, now keep your legs there, but let go of them. Interlace your fingers behind your head. Bring your elbows towards the ceiling. Swing your legs lightly and easily, and each time you do, lift your head with the help of your hands as you open your legs. And just see how they open now. Sideways. Think sideways. Not rocking. Not rocking. If you know you're rocking, that's okay. But it's not a rocking, feet down, head up, head down, feet up. It's a swinging the legs. Swinging the legs and opening them sideways. Do it with one. Yeah, as you lift your head. Because you'll find your hip joint on the other side. So I'm just talking to someone in particular. If you do it with one leg, and you can differentiate in your hip joint, you'll get the central organization. But it can be difficult to differentiate your hip joint when you make it light and easy. So the swinging of the feet, a light swinging, and the swinging of the feet will also bring your knees closer towards you. Okay, leave it. Lengthen your legs. Bring your arms by your sides. And notice how you feel yourself now, how you sense yourself from your contact with the floor. The length of your spine and its shape, its length, the weight of your head, the movement of your breathing. Do some parts of you feel lighter or heavier? Or longer? Or smaller? And roll yourself to one side and bring yourself up to sitting and into standing. And notice yourself standing now, your experience of standing. Because every lesson will change, shift something. So what's in you? How are you organizing yourself now that you can observe your contact with the floor? Could be something about your sense of uprightness. Could be something about your legs, sense of work or less work or softness. And when you're ready, walk around, continue to observe yourself. What's the quality in your walking now? How would you describe it to yourself? How would you describe it to somebody else? Not in a way that you feel like it needs to make sense necessarily, but is the you that is walking now a little more comfortable in yourself? Okay, and let's take a break till a 20-minute break.